Hi everyone, welcome to part 3 of Textual Criticism and Introduction. Today we're going to be taking a look at the actual pages in the Hebrew Bible and how they're laid out and how you can use them as a text critic to try to understand the different readings, the different variants that are found in the Hebrew Bible. We're going to look very briefly at the layout of each page, how to use the notes on the page, again, very briefly, and more importantly, how to use the apparatus at the bottom. So let's take a quick look at the layout of the page. So here we have Exodus chapter 3 in what's called Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, which is BHS for short. And if you take Hebrew, this is probably the Hebrew Bible that you will use, the critical edition that you will use. There's a new version coming out, Biblia Hebraica Quinta, which is still in fascicle form, but at least last I heard. But this is what is generally used. So on the page you have 4 primary parts. The main text, this is the actual Hebrew Bible. The Mazorah Parva, the small Mazorah, these are notes from the scribes out in the margins. The Mazorah Magna, which are references to a long list or long list of notes published in a separate volume. Don't have to worry about that too terribly much. And then under the yellow there you see this bottom apparatus, the critical apparatus. That's probably the most important part for the text critic. So let's take a closer look. Now that you understand sort of the different parts, the main things that you need to worry about are the body of the text, and then what's underneath of this yellow box. A quick note though on this Mazorah Parva on the side. Over here are written notes about things that the scribes thought were interesting or things that were more complex or noteworthy. One of the things, though, that is shown consistently out here are things called Kurei Kethives. And Kurei Kethiv is Aramaic. It means what is read and what is written. And I'll do a daily data probably next week, and I'll talk about a very important Kurei Kethiv, which is the Tetragrammaton, the word Adonai, Yahweh, that shows up in the text. And a very common misunderstanding of what is written and what is read has led to something that I think all of you will find interesting, because you'll know exactly what it is, and I think you'll be surprised to know that it's an error. It's a faulty understanding of what the biblical text was saying, and that's the word Jehovah. So we'll talk about that in the daily data next week. But let's move on to the more important part, I suppose, for our discussion today, and that is this critical apparatus under the at the bottom of the page. So, again, we're in Exodus chapter 3, and I want to draw your attention down to verse 14. Now, if you understand Hebrew, this will be a little easier, obviously, for you. If not, don't worry about it. I'm just going to read what the text says. And God said to Moses, here, let me bring my mouse up. And God said to Moses, however we want to translate this, I will be what I will be. This is that really important verse. And he said, thus you will say to the sons or the children of Israel, I will be whatever sent me to you. This phrase right here, if you look, there's a tiny little B. And that B is it's a footnote marker. And it tells you to come down here and look at this B. Now let me draw your attention to this here. We're in verse 14. And as you come along, you see A, these two go together. And of course, they go with the verse 14, AA. That's a variant right here. We're just going to deal with this one today. You continue on in verse 14, you come to a B. And it's just one. That means it deals with this right here. You come down to the B. It says a multitude of manuscripts and the Samaritan Pentateuch have this phrase. So how do I explain this? This consonant here means two or four, but here in this phrase it means two. So to the children of, or to the sons of, whatever. Instead of writing the lamed to, they use a different word, L, which also means two. So these are, synonymous. These mean the exact same thing, but they're just written. They're using different forms to mean the same thing. But this is a variant. But that's what you do. You see, you look down here, you find your footnote, you come down here and you look at which manuscripts, which versions have this variant reading, and then they show you what the variant reading is. That's really how this text is meant to be used. So again, if you look at the one we looked at before, the A and the A, what goes in between, you come down to verse 14, A to A, and it tells you that this text, this Greek text, which we can get into later if you like, is what stands in this place. So that's how this is used. Seems straightforward, and I guess in some ways it is. The problem is, as we talked about last week, how to understand. This is how you collect the variants, right? This is how you collect them. The analysis of the variants is the more complicated part. The nice thing about this text is that the variants have been collected for you, right? The person, the people that put together BHS brought all the variants together for you so that you can then analyze them at a glance. But this is how you use the text and the apparatus to try to get at the meaning behind the different variants. So, we talked about the Hebrew Bible. In the next Daily Data, tomorrow, we're going to be looking at the Greek New Testament, the Nestle on 27. It's the one I cut my teeth with. And I'll show you again, similarly, how you have the body Greek text, and then underneath of it, the apparatus, which shows you the variants. So stay tuned for that, and should round out the week with a decent introduction to textual criticism. So stay tuned. Thanks.